Good morning, Stuart.
Morning, Carl.
I just realised that was going in the direction of Good Morning Vietnam, the way I did that. Sorry about that. Welcome everybody to FRB Friday Vibe. I hope everyone's had a good week. Certainly myself and Stuart have had some great discussions, which we're going to review today. I think there's a theme running through our discussions today, which is about doing the right thing. And we've got perhaps different views on that at the moment. Stuart, first of all, we had our discussion on ED&I, and we were looking at the business case. Should we have a business case for diversity and inclusion? And I thought it was a discussion that took some interesting turns, as in we started very much on the theme of doing the right thing should be good enough. Then we started to dive into some issues, and you very quickly got to some real commercial outputs from ED&I. So it was quite a bizarre conversation in a way, I felt, looking back on it. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I guess no one out there that we've talked to so far has a commercially orientated business case for their D&I efforts and projects, etc. And all in favour, to your point, of doing the right thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, clearly, culturally, morally, ethically, doing the right thing trumps everything else. But yeah, as we explored, there's always an instance where a D&I team might be competing for investments against very commercially orientated initiatives, and just in terms of their armory to be able to present things not just on the basis of doing the right thing, but also on the commercial benefits of doing the right thing, would really strengthen their case against competing in a commercial world. So that's what we're exploring, and as you said, no one was really doing it, but yet when you sort of talk through some of the benefits people were seeing, yes, that people are seeing better attraction, retention, engagement, all sorts of actually quite commercially based benefiting criteria, yet no one was really using that as part of the equation of doing more of it.
Yeah, I agree. The opening was interesting. There were one group of people saying, and rightly talking about and describing how they wanted diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, different approaches to solving a problem, and that was key to their company's success. That was where they were. They were trying to disrupt a market. One of the companies that you work for, Atom Bank, they were trying to disrupt the market. So it was sort of core to where they were, not at the outside, not on the fringes of what the company was about at that time. It was the central, it was like the core thing. And then you had other companies looking at their field force and talking about the advantages of the field force being representatives of the communities they work in. And that's huge. That's not small. That's not, people talking the same language, the same cultures, the same approaches to things. It was just really substantial things. And then we had people in that working, supporting mental health and that sort of thing, and addiction. And they were saying how vital it is to have a mix of support staff that could empathize with the people that they were trying to help, so they understood them. Now, this is not fringe, as I said, they're not fringe issues. So I was straight away, I thought it was really bizarre, because these are not fringe issues, right? These are central issues. So it is interesting that it's not linked so easily to commerciality. I think the phrase "doing the right thing," which we've all heard over the years, is probably a double-edged sword in a way. As you rightly said, we don't want to discourage anybody from doing the right thing. So please don't think that's what we're saying. But as you rightly said, the number of times in customer experience, employee experience, People are talking about doing the right thing, and 5 minutes down the road, when you're talking to them, they haven't got the budget to buy coffees for everyone in the coffee shop. And you think, whoa, this is not right. Okay, people need resource. If you're going to have that big an influence on a company, then you need resource to make it right. So I'm going to be on a campaign, I think, to, even though these making the links and drawing the links between what we're doing and commerciality are hard to find, I think we need to go and look for them. Not that everything.
Yeah, I think that's something that came out. That came out loud and clear, and it's part of the conversation, which is it was in some instances it wasn't for the lack of wanting to understand the commercial benefit, but it was the lack of clarity of the alignment of, you know, isolating the efforts that were going into to do, you know, great ED&I type activities and the benefits that it was creating over and above just other things that were going on in the business that might have been driving the same benefits, right? And without being able to have some sort of control or ability to measure the contribution of ED&I to that stuff versus other stuff, it was very hard to prove, beyond all doubt, the effect it's having. Now everyone knows it is having an effect. Everyone, it's obvious to most, right? But to be able to then drive a business case on knowing that if I pull this lever, it's going to have this amount of commercial benefit in whatever flavor, very hard to try and get down to some true maths that the stack.
I understand what you're saying, Stuart. But I'm going to take that one on a little bit. I'm in a Friday mood. I'm in a combative mood today. How much money is spent on leadership and leadership training, right? Thousands, if not millions of pounds. Some of it's really good, some of it's necessary, and I'm not saying that leadership is not important, but in the same way, you can't make the direct comparisons with the money you spend on leadership training and the success of the teams that they're running. That team may change, something else may change. The technology may change, the environment may change. I had a bizarre situation probably 10 years ago, where a lot of money was spent on some training, and I was part of that training. And we were really thinking, is this going to pay? How are we going to prove the return on investment? Well, something completely out of our control happened in the customer environment, and all the stats went up. And so everyone claimed it. And it's really difficult. And the same at the start of when we were talking about customer experience. Some guys from one of the Europe's top delivery companies, logistics companies, were talking about their sales effort and their sales conversion rates. But when you stopped and look at their sales conversion rates against the customer experience rating, there was a direct comparison. And yet sales were getting all the commercial benefit. And at that point, the customer experience people weren't getting any credit. So I think if we go and look with a different attitude, we must be able to find the links with what we're doing. Because, as you said a couple of seconds ago, intuitively we know it's true. Is it just burden of proof that's standing in the way, that's holding back the investment that is needed? I think.
I understand, and I think your point is well made, right? And I agree with you that there must be, if we all believe it, there must be a way of demonstrating and proving it, right? I also think you could look at the counter side and about is doing the right thing good enough, right? And I say that because slightly different context, but again in the news this week. There's two things that we've been talking about for a while, Carl, isn't there? Where companies clearly weren't doing the right thing. So it's a post office scandal, and clearly more views that are eye-opening this week around the lead software architect / engineer, manipulating of statements in a court of law. Removing what was said to be emotive statements when actually they were just literally removing whole bullets. That's not changing the emotion to do with potential software failures. Is that doing the right thing? I don't think so. And another good example this week, which is Boeing, when we talked about Boeing before, which clearly not listening to its own employees, people knowing things were not going right, quality corners were being cut. And I guess, for me, the good news this week is, I guess, the US prosecutors have said to the Department of Justice that they should be pressing for, some form of corporate charges now. There's enough evidence. So, to me, again, was Boeing doing the right thing? Arguably not. Now, clearly, it hasn't gone yet to court. But the fact that there's the prosecutors are going to take them to court would suggest otherwise, right? So doing the right thing, even though people think that's enough and that's good enough and that's what we all stand by ethically and morally, actually no. There's companies that choose other paths, aren't there?
Okay, so interesting juncture here, Stuart, because we also talk about doing the right thing for the diversity and inclusion. We also came to a point where if it goes to a disciplinary committee, then it's gone too far. You failed, right? All the work around gender equality and those sort of issues and other discriminations. If it's got to a point of law, then it's gone too far. So let's have a look at doing the right thing. I've got a thought here. Do we say doing the right thing when we run out or we find it difficult to articulate what it is we should be doing? Is that what's happening? Are we getting to a point where, and as we talked about before, heard at many conferences, the thing about these soft skills is they're really difficult, and the people skills can be really difficult. So, do we default to doing the right thing when we run out of our ability to understand what is going on? So should we actually look at doing the right thing as a bit of a failure in itself?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And again, we've talked before about zero tolerance for some of these things, and yet too often there is always a degree, or too often there's a degree of tolerating wrong behavior, wrong mindsets, and even inaction is in some way tolerating, right? So, and yet, too often people are not prepared to stand up for what's right, internally or externally, and therefore arguably they're not doing the right thing, or they're relying on a statement without actually following through with conviction. And so I think it's an interesting thing to explore. I still think, back to your point, if there is a way of turning some of this obvious, thing culturally into commercial benefits, the stronger that linkage, the stronger the appetite to convict.
Yeah, and I liked where some of the conversation went when people were talking about having to prove their commitment to ED&I when they were tendering for contracts. And that for me is really interesting, because on some of these occasions, to get 20 points on a tender is really, you would spend a lot of money on that in other areas. So that's having a direct impact on the company's commercials. The same with partners and that sort of area. People are talking about ED&I now in those areas as a must, as a have to have. And that's really good. So that's a direct link to the commercial reality. So I really like that. I think there's a lot in there that is going to add. The other thing that I like, Stuart, that a couple of people in that discussion talked about, which has stayed with me, is that the younger generations coming through, rightly, and all credit to them, are a lot more conscious about these sort of issues and are prepared to stand up for them. And that's a fantastic thing. I think that's one of the things that's coming through that is great. And as those people mature into real influence and positions of power within organizations, things are going to change. They're going to drive that change. So I think that was another powerful thing on reflection that came out of that conversation. I think we can see the difference. I think you said it during the week, the difference between 15 years ago and now. Well, I think if you project forward another 10 years, it's again going to be massively different. And interestingly, that came out in the future of work discussions the week before, didn't it? That attitudes are changing, they're changing fast. And people are, I think, more prepared to act on those instincts, those injustices than they were before. So I think it's all catching up with companies. I think so. I may be optimistic here, but I'm seeing a brighter future for these things. It's just that we have to get the mechanisms in place, otherwise they may stall. So
Agreed.
Doing the right thing, interesting. Let's move on to talking about AI. We've got an AI conversation coming up this week. So the group that we've got running around digital, we've sort of said, okay, this is going to be digital stroke AI, because AI is something that's being talked about everywhere at the moment. I'm excited about the discussion. I've already talked to quite a few people, and I don't know how we're going to cope with such a broad range of opinions on a subject and such a broad range of knowledge on this subject. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunately it's one of those things, because it's still, relatively in its infancy, although you wouldn't believe it's been around since the 1950s.
Hang on, Stuart. Hang on. I'm going to interrupt you here. What do you mean AI has been around since the 1950s? Come on, you can't make statements like that, Mr. Bromley, without supporting with facts, please.
Well, John McCarthy was the guy who probably was the founder of AI, who was doing stuff back in the 1950s. You had ELIZA back in the 1960s. You had Deep Blue in the 1990s. You got all sorts of, so this stuff's been going for years. So the concepts have been around for 70 years, right? The issue is the computational power, the data in particular, hasn't necessarily been there until probably the last sort of 5 years, right? So it's only really now where some of this stuff is really becoming more mainstream. And because obviously every year you go on, the story that the level of computational power for your money is doubling, if not quadrupling, every year. And therefore, it's now becoming much more mainstream that you've got the ability to utilize some of these techniques and concepts that's been around literally for 70 years. So I think you have to start on the basis that people probably don't know. Because the amount of people on the conversation, there's a varied level of understanding. I think we're going to have to start it relatively basic to get some of the concepts well understood. And actually, interestingly, going back to our theme of doing the right thing, I think that's where we're going to start. As in, what is it? When would you use it? When wouldn't you use it? What's the advantages, disadvantages? Let's start some really basic conversations so we tune people in to really what's it all about, right? In actual, in real terms, real abilities to deliver it.
Yeah. So we're coming at this subject from quite different places, Stuart. I haven't had as much exposure to AI as you have, and I think it's good for the debate, actually, because why I pulled you up on it's been around for 50 years is for most people they've only heard it over the last 2 or 3 years. So an understanding what it really is and what it isn't is very, very difficult, and to get your head round what it can actually bring is really quite difficult. And it's not being helped, I've got to say, by every software company now claiming that it's powered by AI. That's not helping the subject, because it's one of those phrases that doesn't say anything. If you haven't been in that world, you don't really understand what it means. Okay, we've all seen Chat GTP and these things, and other software that can help you. But do we really understand what it's doing? Do we understand the biases it's bringing in, the worldview it's bringing in? really difficult. And I'm talking to a lot of my friends and colleagues in education. They're also very concerned about the subject and what it can and what it can't do. So I'm looking forward to the debate, but I'm a bit I'm quite concerned, like you are, I think, about there's such a broad level of understanding how we diffuse that and how we help people in this subject, because we're here to help people, in responsible businesses, and that's what we're all about at the core. And how do we help them get through with such different level of understanding? How do we get them through? How do we combat some people?
So I think so, but I think we've got to get people to that basis, and I think Catherine on the chat is raised a couple of points around generative AI and large language models. I think and you're right, Catherine. I mean, but again, it's to do with computational power. The concepts for generative AI and large language models have been around for many years, but it's only probably in the last 4 or 5 years where the computational power has given us the ability to really leverage the power of AI to generate, right, to create, which is fascinating, right? And whether that's creating, visual, audio, text, whatever it might be, the power of leveraging and learning from large language models to create something or to respond to a situation, a problem, a statement, or a set of statements to generate is fantastic, right? And again, it's a recent phenomena. So but generative AI is just one aspect of AI. Again, there's several different abilities of how you can use some of this technology to solve problems, to respond in I guess in more the way the brain functions, to solve a problem and or to analyze something or to respond to some sort of stimulus or to create, right? And I think we can get onto those different sort of, I guess, use cases once we've got the level of understanding across our community to a level of a base where they understand the art of the technologies and the capabilities that are out there. I mean, the other thing that's helped obviously massively is the amount of open source capabilities on the market as well. So a lot of people are creating AI powered engines that help that companies can use. So, and even to data agree, you need lots of data and data scientists and really clever people that can really understand how you do this stuff. Actually, you can buy data these days. You can buy frameworks and all sorts of computational neural designs that actually will create you a capability from without very little to start off, and again, so that gives a way of a company getting into this stuff in a way that can give them some level of capability without having to do huge amounts of stuff themselves, right? So there's certainly abilities that can give you a jump start, whereas again 4 or 5 years ago that just wasn't around.
See, and thank you, Catherine, for your comments on chat there, and it illustrates where we are with this subject and what you're talking there, Stuart. There are so many possibilities. Okay, there are so many possibilities, and generative AI is one of the things that's a huge revolution in some respects. In other respects, it's been really disappointing, and that's not down to the technology. That's down to people's data and how they've deployed it. So our experience of it, and I got a feeling. We love talking about inside out and outside in, Stuart. So I think in this debate we're going to take 2 roles. Okay, you're the inside out because AI is something that you spend a lot of time in, and I'm going to be outside in. So I'm looking at AI from a perspective of the skeptical. Okay, the people that are, and that's not really my position, but I'm just going to take that position for the moment. And you soon get into some debates around ethics, and you get some debates around is this just going to replace people? What's the point of replacing people? What's the point of making artificial people to take away the job from the real person? And also, a lot of this generative AI is you only have to look at it for a little while, and it's as good as it is. You can say that's not a real person. It gives people a funny feeling. So And then there's a whole load of internal business processes, systems that can be enhanced with AI. So it's going to be a fascinating debate. Catherine, you're more than welcome to join us. Send us something on LinkedIn. It's going to be interesting to see how go back to how we frame it and which parts of it we start to look at and start to prioritize in here.
I think I don't know whether because you said you're going to be the skeptic, or whether you're fearful, because that's definitely comes up time and time again as well. We hear people that fear some of this stuff, and whether that's because they just don't understand it well enough or not, I think is, and that's normally the case. But I'm sure there'll be other reasons too. And yeah, some of this stuff may replace people's jobs, but I mean, as always, I think jobs will evolve accordingly based off of how technology can be used and deployed. And then you said when and why you'd use this. Well, I think again, just the ability to computate major, large data sets, complex data, 24/7. I think is, and the speed, doing things that frankly you just probably wouldn't employ necessary people to do, gives you new opportunities, new business cases as well, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to sustain that skeptical point of view, Stuart. I just can't do it because I'm a great believer you cannot turn any new technology off. Okay, and every time you try to go back, it fails. So I can't sustain that position. I don't think. But there is still a wide gap between people's understanding of this subject, and I think that's probably where you have much more understanding of this subject than I do, and I can see the potential in it. And I think I'm open-minded enough to look at what it can do. But it's going to be interesting how we square those two things of knowledge, I think, perhaps, of what AI is, and more importantly, what it isn't. Because, as we said a couple of times, everybody's now claiming, their pencil sharpeners AI empowered. It's just not. It's not sustainable. So I'm looking forward to the debate. And of course, as we know, that the future work group that we're running, AI is going to be in there. So it's going to be a fascinating one. And certainly ethics is something that's going to be in there. Doing the right thing is going to be in there. So I think we're more or less out of time, Stuart. So doing the right thing. Do we have to re-engineer?
I think it's interesting. Doing the right thing on AI is absolutely key to the construct. Validating your models not just once but on an ongoing basis is absolutely key. It's never going to be 100%, but neither are human beings. And I think that's the point. As soon as you get yourself where your AI is outperforming a human, then doing the right thing is to use the AI, right? As long as you keep on validating and verifying that the models are accurate, right? Because they're never going to be 100%. None of this stuff's 100%. So it's always going to be a bit mix of human and machine. You need experts to help train the machine or validate the algorithms, the output.
Yeah.
And therefore it's always going to be a mix. But as soon as you get to the level when the machine is outperforming the human for those tasks, then doing the right thing would be to use the machine, surely.
Yeah, and we're seeing some brilliant advances in the medical world because of AI, and that's down to the the power of it to crunch the data in my layman's terms, and that's just got to be a good thing, and everyone's got to wake up and say that is fantastic. But there's still that element of control, I think, and who controls the machine, which is a bit basic. And there is still going to be a lot of people that are worried about their jobs, and also it can be a difference between generations, the understanding of this. So we need to be careful of that one as well. So thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Catherine, and others for your comments. Looking forward to the debates. Anyone is welcome to join us. Go to www.frb.buzz or contact us on LinkedIn, and we'll get you involved in the discussion. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend, Stuart. We'll speak to you next week.